Sixth grade math with Mr. Anderson.
All right, today we'll be doing ratios part 2. Let's get equivalent. So here's our ratio, 8 to 12. And to find an equivalent ratio, equivalent means equal, right? So we can do one of two operations. We can multiply or we can divide. Okay? Now remember we learned about 3 different ways to write a ratio. Well, you know what we're pretty used to lately, and that is fractions. So what I would do is I would just write this as a fraction. So 8 over 12. So for our ratios today, why don't you just write them as a fraction? Okay, since we're pretty used to them. All right, now how do we find an equivalent ratio with 8 over 12? Well, we said we could multiply. Well, it means you can multiply any number you want as long as what you do to the top, you do to the bottom, right? You have to do it to both numbers. So if I wanted to find an equivalent ratio, I could multiply by 10, and then that would equal 80. Yeah, it's hard to draw on a mouse pad, that's for sure. And then do the same to the bottom, 12 times 10, and that would be 120. Okay, so 8 over 12 would be equal 80 over 120. All right. Now let's try division. Now, division is a little bit trickier, obviously, because you want to get two whole numbers when you divide, right? So for this one, what are you thinking? What can you divide the top and the bottom by? It has to be the same number. Well, I'm guessing you probably picked either divide by 2 or divide by 4, right? At least I hope that's what you did. Well, if you said divide by 2 because they're both even, you can divide the top and bottom by 2, and you get 4 over 6. So 4 to 6 is an equivalent ratio here, or equivalent fraction, right? Now, sometimes we have to put them in simplest form. So some of you thought right away, well, let's put it in simplest form. Let's divide by 4, as that is the greatest common factor that you can divide both the top and bottom by 4. And if you do that, and that's going to be coming in handy here coming up, you get 2 on the top and you get 3 on the bottom. So 2 to 3 would be an equivalent fraction, or a ratio. All right. So for our assignment today, there's going to be 3 different methods that might help you solve for the answers here. And usually one way will work better. Okay. Sometimes one way doesn't work at all, or it takes multiple steps. So let's just see. Now, you can choose any one of these ways, but I'm going to show you all the ways. So the question is, are the ratios 4 to 8 and 1 to 4 equivalent? Okay. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to write them as fractions. So 4 over 8 and 1 over 4. Okay. Now, we're trying to figure out if these are equal. So I'm just going to put an equal sign in between. Now, I said we can multiply or divide. Well, let's start with the smaller number here. How do you go from 4 to 8? What do you multiply by? Well, you multiply by 2, right? And what you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. Now, does 1 times 2 equal 4? The answer is no. Okay? And so these are not equivalent or not equal. If this was 2 over 8, then I know it would be. Okay? So that is one way you can multiply or divide. Now you could have also done this. You could have also said, okay, how do I go from 1 to 4? And to go from 1 to 4, you divide by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. If you do 8 divided by 4, that would be 2. And as you can see, that wouldn't work. They're not equal. The other way is this. First, write down both fractions. So I put down both fractions, and let's make both of these into simplest form. And so if you look, so simplest form again is what you can divide the top and bottom by. Usually the greatest common factor. So it has to be the same number. In this case, we're going to divide by 4, both the top and the bottom, right? So 4 divided by 4 is 1. And 8 divided by 4 is 2. So equals a half. Okay? So 4/8 in simplest form is a half. Now let's put this in simplest form. Well, 1 over 4, that is in simplest form, right? 1 divided by 1 is 1, and 4 divided by 1 is 4. And so as you can see, these are not equivalent. That'd be a no. They're not equal. The other way is the butterfly method. Remember this? You circle the diagonals. You do 4 times 4, that's 16. And then you circle this diagonal. And then at the top here of the butterfly, that's why it's called the butterfly method. It kind of looks like a butterfly, right? This is where you write the number. So 1 times 8 is 8. And there is some algebra behind this, how you would actually solve it. But I'm not going to go over that right now. And as you can see, this one is bigger. Okay, this one is greater. And so that tells me that they are not equivalent. They're not equal. So there are 3 ways there just to solve one problem, and any 3 of these ways would have worked. Now, what would have been the quickest here? Really, on this one, any one of these ways would have been pretty quick. Okay? This one, are the ratios 3/5 and 12/20 equivalent? Okay. Please do this with me. So first we write down as a fraction our ratios, so 3/5 and 12/20. All right. Now, how do I go from, I like to start with the smallest to the biggest, because I like multiplying. I know a lot of you would rather multiply than divide. Let's get bigger. So to go from 3 to 12, we'd multiply 3 times 4 is 12. Now let's see if it works here. 5 times 4 does equal 20. So yes, these 2 ratios are equivalent. Okay, let me just show you the other 2 ways as well. Okay, so the other way is put them both into simplest form. Well, this is already in simplest form. You can just divide the 3 by 3, and 3 does not go into 5 evenly. So I know it's in simplest form. This one, first thing I notice, they're both even. I could divide by 2. Then I'd have to divide again, I can see, because you know what? 4 goes into both again, doesn't it? Okay, so let's divide the top and bottom by 4 here. And I want a dot. Oh, well, you get it, right? So that's 3. Divide the bottom by 4, and that is 5. And look, 3/5 is equal to 3/5. They're both in simplest form. If it's the same number, then you know that they are equivalent or equal. The other method would be the butterfly method. 3 times 20 is 60. And then 12 times 5 is also 60. So again, I know that they are equal. All right. Let's look at this one. Are the ratios 9, 6, and 6/4 equal? First looking at this, you might think, no. But is that true? Well, first let's write them as fractions. Please do these problems with me. So the first method is multiply or divide. And as you're going to see here is this is probably the least effective, or one of the longer methods for these set of numbers here. So I'm going to divide, and I'm going to divide this one. Well, because I know I can't do like 6 times 2 would be 12. Doesn't fit. And 4 times 2 would be 8. And 4 times 1 is 4. So I can't multiply to go from one side to the other. So I'm going to start off by dividing. I'm going to divide this by 2. Okay. And if I divide the top and bottom by 2, my new ratio would be 3 over 2, right? Because 4 divided by 2 is 2. And now, this looks like it'll work. How can I go from 3 to 9? Well, you'd multiply 3 times 3 to get 9. And what you do to the top, you do to the bottom. And 2 times 3 is 6. And so I know that, yes, these two are actually equal or equivalent. Okay? So this was an extra step here, wasn't it? So this probably wouldn't have been the best method. Now, you could have made them both simplest form. And we actually did that right here, didn't we? We divided the top and bottom by 2. And so that equals 3 over 2. I already did the math. I don't have to write it down again. And for this one, 3 can go into both. So I can divide the top and the bottom by 3. And I can't quite fit it, so I'm just going to write down and dividing by 3 here. And so 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And look, they're both in simplest form now. And they're both the same fraction or ratio, so I know they're equal, so I know, yes, they are equivalent. Other method, so this has been a pretty quick method. So with the butterfly in this case, 9 times 4 is 36. 6 times 6 is 36. Both those numbers are equal, so I know, yes, it is equal or equivalent. All right, so for this one, select all ratios equivalent to 3 over 2. So we can kind of do what we were just doing. So 3 over 2, and then I've got 11 over 1. Okay. The first thing I notice is they're both in simplest form. Okay. Can I go from 3 to 11? Nope. 2 to 1? Nope. So this one would not be. You could also do butterfly. 3 times 1 is 3. 11 times 2 is 22. And so they are not equivalent. They're not equal. All right, so the next one is 18 over 16. And it's important you write these down for your IXLs today. If you do a lot of this in your head, you're going to get a few wrong. And then you're going to get mad. And then when you say, I'm not good at this, and I'll be saying, well, did you write it down? You're like, well, no. So, I don't know. Write it down so you get it right. So if you multiply the top times 6, you get 18. If I multiply the bottom times 6, is what you do the top, you do to the bottom, right? And we're seeing if these are equal. You get 12. So this one does not work either. This one doesn't work. So it's going to have to be this one, right? But I'm still going to figure it out. You could have done butterfly method and you would have saw that these are not equal. And again, I'm using that first column one, and we multiply and divide. How do you go from 2 to 14? That's times 7. And then 3 times 7, that does equal 21. So I know that they are equal. So this one's the only one that is equivalent. Now you could also do it like this. The first number times 7, right, is 21. What you do the first number, you do the second number. 2 times 7 is 14. Yes, it works. All right. So the next one. 5 over 10. Let me give you a hint. I'm going to have you try this and see if you can figure out which one of these three, or is it all three, are equal to this. I notice my ratio that I'm comparing here, 5 over 10. First thing I notice is this isn't in simplest form. So my first hint to you is you might want to put this in simplest form first. That can make it a little bit easier. You'll miss less. Okay, so let's put it in simplest form. Divide the top and bottom by 5, but a lot of you can tell pretty quick. 5 over 10, right? What does that equal? Well, that's the same as a half, isn't it? Yeah, 5/10 or a half. Okay. So first thing I did was I turned this in simplest form, so it'd be 1/2. Now see which one of these are equivalent. Go ahead, push play when you think you have done it. Go ahead. All right, so the first one, 2/5. Right. Well, I think you can notice without going too far here. How do you go from 1 to 2 times 2, right? What you do to the top, you do to the bottom. 2 times 2 is 4, so that doesn't work, does it? Okay. All right, the next one is 1/2 and 15 over 30. We're looking at this one. Remember the 3 columns I did? I'm going to do butterfly here. That's 30. 1 times 30 is 30. They are the same. Woohoo! Give that a little check here. And then this one. Well, let's see. We have 1/2, right? 1 over 2, and I already know that. You know what? 10 is half of 20, right? So it's going to equal a half. If I divide the top by 10, I get 1. If I divide the bottom by 10, I get 2. I put it in simplest form. And then, bada bing, bada boom. That would be an answer, right? Okay. Try this one. See which ones are equivalent. Again, I'll give you a hint. Put this one in simplest form first. Okay? Go ahead. All right, simplest form. Divide the top by 3, get 1. Divide the bottom by 3, get 4. 1/4. Okay. A little bit easier to compare 1/4. So let's see. My first one is 44 over 48. Yikes. I can tell this is not going to work already. Okay. I know that these are not equivalent just by looking at it. Yeah. So how do you go from 1 to 44? It's times 44, right? And then that should be times 44. There we go. And does 44 times 4 equal 48? Well, I know 4 plus 48. 4 plus 44 is 48, but you can't plus. It's multiply, so I already know this one is out. And I can just look at this next one. How many times is 1? How do you go from 1 to 5? That's times 5, right? And then 4 times 5 is 20. Doesn't work. Okay. So then we have this one, 4/16. How do you go from 1 to 4? Look at the top number and the first number. That's times 4, right? Again, I'm just kind of showing you some different methods, some different shortcuts that might work sometimes. 1 times 4 is 4. And then 4 times 4 is what I do to one number, I have to do to the other, right? And 4 times 4 is 16, so I know, hey, these are equivalent. Check. Okay, so the next IXL is finding a missing number in a ratio. So find the number that makes the ratio equivalent to 2 over 8. All right, so let's take that first number, that first ratio. 2 to 8, write it as a fraction. And then the first number here is going to be 4. And the second number here is what we have to find. So that is the question mark. Okay. We could call it an X. We could just leave it blank, whatever you want. So let's see. We're going from the fraction we know here to fraction we don't. So how do you go from 2 to 4? Maybe we have to multiply or divide, right? 2 times 2 is 4. And what you do to the top, you do to the bottom. So you do times 2. And you get 16, 4/16. So in here, you would just type in 16. Okay? Oh, I can't wait to get the smartboard back to write on than using like this tracker pad here on my computer. All right, why don't you try this one? Find out what number goes here, the missing number, to make these equivalent. Go ahead. And this one is blank to 21. I'll put my equal sign. Blank to 21. I know that's on the bottom. Okay. So how do I go from 3 to 21? Well, 3 times 7 is 21, right? And what you do at the bottom, you do to the top. 4 times 7 is 28. So my ratio is 28 to 21. So 28 goes in here. Okay, that wasn't too bad, I hope, was it? All right, do the same thing for this one. Push play when you have it. All right, so did you set it up correctly? This one, 70 over 30, and then my answer, blank over 3. Okay, so I go from what I know to what I don't know. So from 30 to 3, it's getting smaller, which means I'm going to divide. And 30 divided by what is 3? 30 divided by 10 is 3. And what I do at the top, I do to the bottom. You gotta do it to both sets of numbers. Divide by 10, and you get 7. So my answer is 7 to 3. Okay. And your last IXL is kind of like your first one. It's just in word form. You're finding out, are those equivalent? Yes or no, basically. So, again, I put this on here just because there's 3 different ways to solve. And usually 1 or 2 ways is easier than the other. For this one, I think I'm going to use simplest form here. So 16 cents for every 4 employees. I hope that's not how much they're getting paid, because that would not be good. Okay, must mean something else. Maybe that's how much they spend on toilet paper per employee. I don't know. Okay. All right, so this one would be 14 over 6. And we're going to see if these are equal. I'm going to put it in simplest form. Divide the top and bottom by 2, it looks like. Right? And so that would be 7. 6 divided by 2 is 3, 7/3. So 7 cents for 3 employees. This one, simplest form, would divide top and bottom by 4. And so, I give myself enough room. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 16 divided by 4 is 4. And as you can see, these are both in simplest form. And they're not equal, are they? This one is 4 cents for 1 employee, 4 to 1 ratio. So I would click on no. Could you butterfly method? Yeah, you got bigger numbers though. I thought it was easier just to put them both in simplest form. Okay. You could have put this in simplest form like we did, and then you could have said, well, how to go from 7 to 16? Well, you can't, right? So that wouldn't have worked. So simplest form would have been the best, or butterfly. This one, are these ratios equivalent? Why don't you solve and let me know, are these equal? Okay, and this one, boy, I would put it in simplest form again. And so this is 2 to 1. Divide the top and bottom by 7. This one I can divide top and bottom by 8. And 16 divided by 8 is 2. 8 divided by 8 is 1. Wow. They are equal. Okay, so yes, they are equivalent. This one. Now, it's lined up nice and perfectly. I can do this. My first numbers. How do you go from 5 to 20? It's times 4, right? And then how do you go from 2 to 6? Well, it's not times 4, is it? It's 2 times 4 is 8. That'd be times 3. And you have to multiply both numbers by the same number, so that'd be a no. Okay. Could you have done butterfly method? Yes. You could have done 20 times 2 is 40. 5 times 6 is 30. They're not equal. So no again. Of course, I would have wrote them on the side here, right? I just want to make the video any longer than I have to. Solve this one. Equivalent, yes or no? Push play when you got it. So the first thing I notice is I can't like multiply anything get from 4 to 6. So I think, well, I think the butterfly method might be pretty easy on this one. So let's see, 6 times 10 is 60. And I'm pretty good at counting by 15s. 2 15s is 30, which means 4 15s would be 60. So 15 times 4 is 60, so it is a yes. You could have put them both in simplest form and would have gotten divide by 2. You gotten 5 over 2. Divide by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 15 divided by 3 is 5. And you would have seen, hey, look, they are the same. They're equivalent. They are equal. All right, so, and it was a little bit of a longer video, but there's a few methods you could choose from. Pick a method. Try a few different ones. See what works better for you. And as you can see, I use different ones. Some worked easier on some problems than the others. Okay. If you have questions, just let me know.